All right, everyone. This is Prophetess Dwan from the Global Institute of Church and Marketplace Prophets. We want to thank you so much for your patience tonight. Tonight we are teaching on Extreme Prophetics, the Standard Life of a Prophet. And it's going to be one of those webinars where we say you might be a prophet if. So again, we thank you for being with us tonight, and we thank you for your patience as we get going. Let's go over protocol real quick. If you have a question throughout the teaching, all you need to do is hit *2. That will allow you to raise your hand when we have you muted out. Once we see your hand, we will take the time to let you know when we're ready for you to ask your question. If you're on the webinar area, all you have to do is go to, I want to say, the left part of your screen in a question and answer section. Ask your question or give your comment, and we will get to you as soon as we can. Normally the teaching takes about 20 to 30 minutes, and then we have a little bit of time after that for questions. All right. And for the sake of those who are new on the call, again, this is Prophetess Dwan from the Global Institute of Church and Marketplace Prophets. I'm the founder of that. I'm also the executive pastor at the Worship Place here in Jacksonville, Florida, and founder of Dwan & Company Ministry Solutions, where we provide media and ministry solutions for those who are marketplace ministers and those who are fivefold ministry leaders in churches as well. I've been in media for 15, 20 years, started off as a sports videographer, believe it or not, in Grand Island, Nebraska. That was years ago. Worked my way up to the weekend anchor, and next thing you know, I was in Savannah, Georgia, came back to Omaha, Nebraska, went to Birmingham, Alabama as a weekend anchor, then to Nashville, Tennessee, where I started a production firm that morphed into an ad agency, and around that time, Ebony Magazine named me one of 30 future leaders of America, 30 and under, made the move to Jacksonville, Florida in 2004, was ordained a prophet, then went back to my alma mater in Kearney, Nebraska to be the director of marketing at the University of Nebraska Kearney. Stayed there for just a year to help them launch that. And then 2010 founded Global Institute of Church and Marketplace Prophets and started pastoring with my husband in 2012. The Global Institute of Church and Marketplace Prophets is an international professional company of prophets charged with educating, enlightening, and empowering those chosen by God to the prophetic ministry. We do that by conducting and presenting webinars like the one you see here. We also have live events, prophetic events that we hold on a regular basis, and we also try to educate fivefold ministry leaders on how to go forth in ministry with a spirit of excellence. And one of the main things that we are called to do is to eradicate the perversion that has plagued the prophetic for years. So that's why we do what we do. You can find out more about that by going to globalpropheticinstitute.com, globalpropheticinstitute.com. So now let's start off with our teaching. Again, this is Extreme Prophetics, the Standard Life of a Prophet. I am not going to read all of the scripture reference that we have for today, but I will tell you we are coming from 1 Kings 19, all the way through, really, 8 to 9. We go all the way through to 9 with this particular teaching. I could teach out of this chapter. I mean, there's so many great stories and that we can teach from here from. But for today, we're going from 1 Kings 19, from 1 through about 8. Again, we are not going to take the time to read the whole chapter. But by the time I go through and explain a couple of things, you'll know exactly what we're talking about. Now, what we're going to do right now is explain or give you examples of 10 key extreme prophetic identifiers. Again, these are 10 key extreme prophetic identifiers. This means you might be a prophet if you have a disposition towards these 10 key extreme prophetic identifiers. Last time we talked about raising prophetic children and how you can identify them. This time we're talking about how you might be able to identify whether or not you're a prophet if you've never been told before, if you've been told and you're not quite sure. These are just some of the proclivities and things that happen to prophets that will help you kind of have peace of mind after tonight. And so if you have questions, be sure to raise your hands, and we'd love to talk more about all of this. Okay, so let's go. You might be a prophet if you experience, number one, extreme supernatural victory. We see this in the very first verse of 1 Kings 19, where Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how Elijah had just slain all the prophets that were associated with Baal. He had just slain all of them, and there were a lot of them, and he had just slain them. So that was an extreme supernatural victory. But then after this extreme supernatural victory, all of a sudden, moments later, he received extreme threats. We see extreme threats in verse 2 where it says, Then Jezebel sent a messenger unto Elijah, saying, So let the gods do to me and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by morrow about this time. If I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. So essentially she was saying, guess what? I'm going to do to you what you did to these other prophets. And there were extreme threats that Elijah experienced. As prophets, many times we'll have extreme supernatural victories. We see the favor of God upon our life. People wonder, how in the world do you do what you do? Then all of a sudden, after this extreme supernatural victory, next, you have an extreme threat. Something is happening, and you just cannot understand why in the world it's happening to you because there's extreme threats taking place. Then, after you experience extreme threats, guess what? You get really scared. You see extreme fear come upon you a lot, and it's you can't really explain it. And here's the verse that we see this in. And when he saw that, he arose and went for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongeth to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey unto the wilderness and came and sat down under a juniper tree. What we see, the extreme fear made him run. He said, forget this, I am not staying around for this, and then he ran. So he experienced extreme fear, which caused him to run off by himself. And he came and he sat down under a juniper tree, and he requested for himself that he might die. And he said, it is enough. Now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am not better than my fathers. So after experiencing extreme fear from hearing Jezebel's threat against him, all of a sudden, he's so scared that now he goes into deep depression and just says, God, you know what? Just take my life, please. It's not worth it. I don't want this. You might be a prophet if all of a sudden you're scared one day, next thing you know, you want to die. You don't want to do what God is calling you to do. You don't want to have to deal with the foolishness that you have to deal with so many people. And again, folks, I'm not talking about the average everyday stuff that most people deal with. I'm talking about this kind of stuff is extreme in your life, and you see this day in, day out. Heck, you even saw this when you were a child as well. So again, there's extreme depression because now you're saying, God, just, take it all. I don't even want this anymore. But all of a sudden, after this extreme depression, next thing you know, you will experience extreme supernatural provision. As a prophet, you will experience extreme supernatural provision. And here it is, verse 5. And as he lay and slept under a juniper tree, behold, then an angel touched him and said unto him, Arise and eat. Extreme supernatural provision was provided right there. Many times with prophets, sometimes you don't see, just because of the process of being a prophet, the process of God allowing the prophetic to work within you and through you, sometimes it's amazing how you are able to live and do much more than survive based off of extreme supernatural provision. So many times in your life, you're not quite sure how you're going to make ends meet, even when you know what God has called you to do, but out of nowhere, on a regular basis, it appears as though God is providing extreme supernatural provision just for you, especially after these different bouts that you have to deal with. So, verse 5 says that the angel touched him and said, "Arise and eat. We got some food for you." That's extreme supernatural provision. But the other thing that we notice with prophets along the way, that there is always constant extreme supernatural provision that many times cannot be explained. Look at this. Verse 6 says, "And he looked, and behold, there was a cake baking on the coals, and a cruse of water at his head. And he did eat and drink, and laid him down again. And the angel of the Lord came again the second time and touched him and said, Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for thee." So here we see two different times pretty constantly right back to back where we see God doing extreme provision in the life of Elijah, and it's supernatural because out of nowhere, all of a sudden, his needs are met. Everything that he needs to live is provided for him supernaturally. And so even as prophets, you might be a prophet if you have seen these types of tendencies and you really cannot explain it to yourself, and sometimes you have a very hard time even trying to explain it to others because it just makes no sense. And when you begin to try to explain it to other people, they think, okay, it's time for you to be Baker Act. It's time for you to go to the loony bin because it just doesn't make any sense. And furthermore, why would you wait on extreme supernatural provision when you can go do some things for yourself? And sometimes even when you try to do things for yourself, when you apply for those jobs, when you try to be at the right place at the right time, it seems like nothing is clicking because extreme prophetics, which is the standard life of a prophet, means that sometimes, even in the midst of doing all that you can do, because of the prophetic process that God has you going through, you're just going to have to sit and wait on him and wait on his extreme supernatural provision, because that is just the life standard of a prophet. Next, you also have just extreme levels of fasting. So here's what you end up doing. Verse 8 says, "And he rose and did eat and drink and went in the strength of that meat 40 days and 40 nights unto Horeb, the mount of God." So after this extreme supernatural provision, then next thing you know, he had extreme fasting. He was called to another level of extreme fasting and of extreme just dependence on God right then and right there. So that's what happens to prophets very much. It's like you fast more than you fast in 1 week, sometimes more than anybody, more than some people will fast in a lifetime. And it's hard for people to understand, but for you, it's just quite natural because this is just your extreme way of life. And sometimes it's just hard to explain to others, and sometimes it's hard for others to understand. Next, after extreme fasting, what you also see is that as prophets, you experience extreme isolation. Again, extreme isolation. Verse 8 says, "And he arose and did eat and drink and went into the strength of that meet 40 days and 40 nights in Horeb, the mount of God. Verse 9 says, and he came thither unto a cave and lodged there, and behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said unto Elijah, what doest thou here, Elijah? And he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, for the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thy altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword, and I, even I, only am left, and they seek my life to take it away. So we have a twofold meaning here. Extreme isolation. When he runs into the cave, that means no one's around him, so you can understand how that is extreme isolation. Many times as prophets, you don't want to talk to people. That's sometimes the personality of a prophet. I like to tell many people who are married to prophets, especially men who are married to prophets who are female, I said you cannot always blame what you see or try to pigeonhole that woman into, typical things that happen to women, for instance, PMS or different things like that, or that's just the way a woman thinks. No, that may not even be her past personality, but what you may be experiencing is the prophetic personality of a prophet, or the extremes of a prophet. And so even as a couple, sometimes you will want to be alone in an extreme way, more so than the average person. And that's just even harder to explain many times. But if you're a prophet, you know what I'm talking about. Or if you might be a prophet, you understand, oh, that's what's been happening. But again, this is on a regular basis. You're fine by yourself for 20 days. You're fine by yourself for, 60 days. You don't have to go outside at all. You can just chill on the inside. That's that type of extreme isolation, especially after a time of extreme fasting as well, because you're positioning yourself to really hear from God. When you see this then in the 10th verse here, I'm just going to go a little bit further just for you. In this 10th verse, what we also see is extreme communion with God and consecration, because right here in his covenant with God, he's talking and he's saying, and I'm the only one left. We see a lot of extreme isolation, but when we move forward, not only do we see isolation, but we see extreme cycles of betrayal and extreme cycles of pity. So what we see here is him talking about the extreme cycles of betrayal, and then the pity as to say, you know what, and I'm the only one here. I'm the only one experiencing this. You will see prophets who do this a lot. I believe once they get to another level of maturity and once they allow others to mentor, then they are able to handle the betrayal and the pity so much better because of just being able to listen and to get help from a senior prophet or someone seasoned in fivefold ministry who can help them. But if not, many times you think you're so big and bad, and you're the one, and God is the only one speaking to you, and you're the only one experiencing these extreme bouts of betrayal and pity, that all of a sudden you're having these conversations with God, and you're asking him what's going on, and he's saying, you know what, just gird up your loins and get ready to do what I've called you to do. So in the midst of being a prophet, know that there are extremes that you will deal with 24/7 and the rest of your life, but it's not until you are able to identify these extremes that then you'll be able to understand and then be able to better operate. So again, you might be a prophet if you experience extreme supernatural victory, extreme threats, extreme fear, extreme depression, extreme supernatural provision, and constant supernatural provision, extreme fasting, extreme isolation, and then extreme cycles of betrayal and pity. Meaning you are betrayed by others, and then because of all of that, something on the inside of you begins to make you just pitiful, and you want to just be down in the dumps and really express yourself and explain this pity that you're dealing with. And so that's one of the main reasons. Let me do my sidebar right here. That it's so important that as extreme prophets or just as prophetic individuals, whether or not you even know you're a prophet or if you're a prophetic intercessor, it's so important that we go through real deliverance. And when I say deliverance, I mean deliverance prayer, casting demonic spirits out. Yes, because with all of the things that you deal with on a regular basis, all of the pouring that you do for others, all of the prophetic shifts that you cause for other people's lives, you also are at war many times on behalf of others. And if you don't get some extreme deliverance, you could very well cross over into perversion and not even know it. And that's a whole other teaching about Lone Ranger prophets and how they end up crossing over and being a Lone Ranger prophet who is perverted and doesn't even know it. So again, this is Extreme Prophetics. What I'm going to do right now is allow you to ask questions about this or comment, or if you need me to dissect something a little bit more, now is the time to ask. Again, you can hit *2 on your phone if you'd like to know a little bit more, if you'd like to ask a question, or if you're in the webcast area, you can do a Q&A or enter a question in that area. And folks, this is not the time to be shy. We provide these type of webinars with you so that you can get some clarity on what is happening to you in life or what you have been experiencing. And so if you have something, now's the time to ask. All righty, *2. And you guys, by now you should know how I roll. If you don't ask any questions, we will end this, call it a night, and all will be well. I'm going to look over in the Q&A section one more time. We're going to refresh and see what's happening over there, and then going to come back over here for *2. If you're on the phone line and you have a question, *2 is how you raise your hand. And okay, we don't have any questions, so here's what I'm going to do. Anybody have any comments, any aha moments tonight about what's been said? If you have a great takeaway, now is the time to share what that takeaway is. We like it to be very interactive, so if you'd like to share with us now, just hit *2, and we will open up your line to hear from you. And while we're waiting over here, we're going to check one more time. All right, then. Let me get ready to close on up. Now, don't email me. If you're on this call, do not email me with any questions, because now is the time to ask them. Again, if you're ever interested in true apostolic and prophetic covering or better understanding of how the fivefold ministry is supposed to work together, if you feel like you need to be trained on a higher level and equipped in the prophetic, do email me at prophetduan@globalpropheticinstitute.com. The phone number is 877-595-9117, extension 3. If you're in the Jacksonville area or anywhere close, I invite you to Friday Night Fire, the Miracle Edition, which is taking place On the second Friday of this month, I know that's different. Normally we have it on the 4th, but we are accommodating Bishop McKissick. He's going to be with us July 12th at 8 p.m. If you know anything about him, you know that he is a walking miracle. Doctors told his mother she would never, ever have a child. So that in itself is a miracle. And then along the way, there's been other just tremendous testimonies that he's come through. He is my former pastor. Right before I got married, I was there as an elder at Bethel. So I'm excited that he is going to be with us for the miracle edition of Friday Night Fire. Many of you know he just had a recent bout with prostate cancer. And what is so, I think, divine about him coming is that we had already scheduled this on the 12th before any of this ever happened, and so I believe we will be the second place that he'll be ministering after coming back to the pulpit from the break when having the cancer surgery. So we're excited about that. Friday Night Fire, the Miracle Edition, July 12th, 8 p.m. at the Worship Place. If you're in or near Jacksonville, you definitely want to be there. It's going to be awesome. Last but not least, our last prophetic webinar series for Boost the Prophetic in You is coming up in August, and that will be Prophetic Healing 101. Prophetic Healing 101 is what we will be dealing with the next time, the first Tuesday of the month in August. So until then, have a great evening, and you will be getting all the other replays as well. God bless, and we will talk with you next month. God bless.
The conference is now completed. Goodbye.